Welcome to the Life of Styn, where our goal is to make your life yours again. Today we're going to be talking about what I think is a foundational topic and a lesson I wish I would have learned earlier in my life. As always, the most advanced topics can be great for those beginning in this journey, as the most basic topics can be the most beneficial for those in advanced stages of development. So let's get started. Nobody's going to do it for you. Now, what do I mean? Well, I mean a lot in a lot of different aspects of life. When I was growing up, I had this unrealistic expectation that somebody would come along and do it all for me, that would love me, that would provide all the things I wanted, like attention, understanding, not being alone, etc., etc. The list goes on forever. Somewhere along the line, I had this fantasy built in my mind that somebody else would do all the hard things to do in my life and whatnot. I wasn't taking accountability in my life. And obviously, this was a very young age, like 12 years old, just starting to grow up, starting to understand what the world is. You're going through school, and really that's your whole life, is your social life, your school life, all of those things. Even though adults after finishing school realize that, those years of your life may have been the best or worst, but at the end of it, they almost have no impact on your life afterwards. Once you become an adult, you realize how monotonous or how arbitrary a lot of the things were that you thought were everything, that was your life. And so we need to take some compassion in that the kids going through these schools and figuring out who they are, this is a very important time in their life, because this is everything to them. The way that they look to their friends and all these things, that's everything to them. So we have to kind of understand that and also help teach them, as well as the adults who went through it all need to have a little bit of compassion, a little bit of understanding, and kind of learn what they went through and why they went through what they did. But anyways, so I wasn't taking accountability in my life. And the most powerful ability in this universe is accountability. Because when you take responsibility for your life, you start to gain control back of your life. But here's a little secret for you. If you learn how to give yourself all of the things you seek for outside of yourself, like acceptance, love, understanding, compassion, whatever it may be, if you provide those things for yourself, you will be successful in life. And instead of wasting your life trying to find those things outside of yourself, you'll realize that all of those things were internal anyway. You can have an amazing support system that loves you, gives you attention, validates you, whatever it may be. But there are times in your life where you could still feel alone, like you aren't loved, like no one cares, that you aren't enough, etc., etc. And from this example, it's obvious it's not from lack of having those things. It's because no matter how external it seems, it's all internal. Now, for example, after I stopped searching for someone else to do it for me or to be what I wanted them to be, and I started being who I needed to be for myself, I didn't need anyone else to show me my worth or to not feel alone or any of those many problems you might see yourself facing. Now, when I get those things outside of myself, it's nice, but it's not necessary for me to be stable, happy, at peace, and joyful. On top of that, my relationships are more meaningful because I'm not expecting anything out of the other party to provide for me, other than just be themselves and for me to be myself. And if it turns out they aren't good people and I find myself that I shouldn't be surrounding myself with them, I don't hesitate anymore to cut out those people because of my securities or abandonment or any of those things. How many times do we do things with the wrong friend group or the wrong people because we just want to fit in, we want to be accepted, all of those things. But the thing is once you can start giving that to yourself, then you won't hesitate to get yourself out of those bad situations where those bad people you shouldn't be hanging around. You should be around people who inspire you, who lift you up, who make you feel like life's worth something, rather than them taking everything, manipulating, victimizing, all these things. It's pretty obvious to tell what feels right and what doesn't at this point. But I want to share something with you. So, Alan Watts, a wise man, go check him out if you haven't, he said this: when you desire something in your life, it's one of two things. One, you already have it, or two, you don't know yourself. End quote. Now, life is most chaotic when you don't know who you are. Why do you seek these things, like love, attention, acceptance, pleasure, or whatever it may be? Is it some unconscious behavior acted out mechanically? Well, sometimes we can feel lost. How many times do you think you know who you are? Then you do something completely out of character. You start to feel like you don't know yourself or why you do the things you do. The psyche is so complicated, and when we take it for granted, it acts out unconsciously. Growing up, I learned that it was up to me to do what had to be done for myself. No one could do it for me. It didn't mean I didn't have a support system or didn't have help. I did, or I could ask for help if I needed it. But at the end of the day, it was me. And every night when you go to bed, whether you have a family, friends, significant other in the bed next to you at the end of the day, when you're laying there ready to go to bed, or even when it's the middle of the day and you're the only one who has to deal with you in your mind, you do it alone. This isn't a bad thing. I'm just trying to point out some things you may not have noticed. This is what most of this work entails, after all. Imagine only having you and yourself, and you don't trust yourself, or you don't even like yourself. That sounds like a whole world of suffering. Because whether you like it or not, you're with yourself 24/7. And trying to hide that or mask that doesn't work so well, does it? Growing up, I was a huge people pleaser because that's how I determined what my worth was, by the validation and acceptance of those around me at any cost. I mean, see how diluted I was and how untrue I was to myself through doing that? Well, I can tell you I suffered a lot. I didn't know who I was, I didn't like myself, and I didn't know why. I gave my power to others to determine whether or not I was worthy of life. Worst of all, I couldn't trust myself, and I didn't know who I was because who I was who I let others let me be. And that wasn't me at all. I had to take my power back and learn who I was. I had to learn that I didn't like doing certain things. I only liked them because it might make me money or status. Now, that's no way to live. I had to learn it was okay to say no and be selfish sometimes. I had to seriously sit with myself and determine what my values actually were and how I wanted to be. I had to accept and see both sides of me, the good and the bad. I had to face the dark side of myself that we all pretend we don't have because we paint ourselves, and more times than not, a false picture of who we actually are. We don't integrate all parts of us, and those parts we lose in the unconscious acts and thoughts we have. So guess what? I stopped throwing a pity party. I stopped faking being hurt to gain attention and acceptance. I stopped being what others thought I should be. Hell, they didn't even know who they were. And more times than not, people are so caught up in their own life that they don't even think a second thought about you. So who cares what other people think? They're so caught up in their life anyway. I'm not saying those people are bad. We all are so caught up in our lives that more times than not, it's always me, me, me. Most of the time, the selfless people are doing it for numero uno, themselves. So right here, right now, your number one should be you. Prioritize yourself first. Learn who you are, why you do the things you do. Find out your values and do the things you want to out of passion, not because you think you'll make a quick buck or gain some fame for it. Even if you do, you won't enjoy it. And you'll suffer way more than the poor guy making street paintings because he actually loves what he does. His quality of life is going to be 10 times better than that of somebody who's doing the work they do for money and status that has to be upheld, and realistically it will tumble or you won't be relevant anymore. And you won't have anything left. When you improve the quality of your mind to such a state, even when you're alone, you couldn't be happier. And you'd be less alone than people going out to parties pretending to be someone they aren't just so that they aren't alone. Right? So the sooner you learn these lessons, the sooner you can start enjoying life. If you want it, go get it. No more excuses, no more playing victim of why you can or can't. You can do anything in your life. But it's not enough for me to know that. You need to know it too. I know you can do and be anything, but do you? Get up and take life by the balls, take responsibility, and make it your bitch. You can either be life's master or life can be your master. What would you prefer? If you don't believe me, well, trying can't be any worse than living in a world where you feel that way. So, thank you if you've made it this far. As always, I'm only human. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Sometimes I don't cover everything I wish to. And on top of that, I'm trying to embody all these things I teach too. Sometimes I need a reminder or to relearn some of the lessons I learned long ago because this is what makes us all the same. And in that way, making mistakes or succeeding, all of it is what the true definition of perfection is. You are perfect just the way you are. But can you see that? Somebody who thinks they need to improve only comes from somebody who has the perspective that there's something to improve, not that there actually is. That, of course, doesn't mean we can't strive for better, but it does mean maybe you aren't seeing yourself in your true light. Until next time, have the day you were meant to have.